Conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Op.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by Archival Revival. Archival Revival is a Christian film archive, and they're paying for vintage Christian films. They're dedicated to preserving and restoring classic Christian films and media. If you have original prints, negatives, or other film elements of classic Christian films, or any audio recording masters for classic Christian record albums, they want to buy them from you. You can contact them at archival.revival@gmail.com. They also have a blog at archivalrevivalblogspot.com. So what they want to do is they want to purchase from you these old, dusty, useless 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter Christian films that you got up there in the church in the pastor's attic, or down in the basement over the youth center over there with the youth group, in those closets. I've seen this stuff myself working in churches. I've seen this stuff. I know it's there. And you find this stuff, you contact archival.revival@gmail.com. They want to purchase from you, digitize it, preserve the film, restore it, and then make those films available to people so they can be played in church and Sunday schools today. Okay. Got a fascinating show ahead for you today. Our guest today is Stephen Spingola, he's a private investigator up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm not Milwaukee. Let me let Stephen say. Stephen, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am. How are you, Mr. Avery?
Thank you so much. Tell us about yourself. Who is Stephen Spingola?
Well, I'm a retired lieutenant with the Milwaukee Police Department. You're right, I actually am in Milwaukee, Wisconsin today. I do teaching, and then I do some investigative work. I also work on a television show called Cold Justice, which is now on the Oxygen Channel.
And you got a website called badgerwordsmith.com. That's where you do your PI work from, right?
Correct. And it's usually just the writing. I just basically comment on high-profile cases similar that you do.
Okay, what about the SpingolaFiles.com?
I talk a little bit about the cases in the news here in Wisconsin, the surrounding areas, missing children, high-profile arrests, police use of force, things of that nature.
Okay, gotcha. And I'm pronouncing it correctly, right? Spingola?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, keep an eye on me with that, because I have an old friend in Staten Island named Spagnola, and I've been calling you Spignola in my head, but it's Spingola, SpingolaFiles.com. Now, this book, Staggered Paths, Strange Death in the Badger State. Staggered Paths, Strange Deaths in the Badger State. I guess when you wrote the title, you didn't think of a radio host having to spit that out one night, did you?
That's true, I didn't.
Well, give us an idea. This is it's kind of related to the Smiley face killer.
Well, it's interesting. I do a lot of teaching, and I have a lot of students. I teach at the college and university level. And what we had up here in Wisconsin is we had 31 young men and one woman over the past by 30 years who have drowned in our various rivers up here. And usually there's a very high level of intoxication of these people, but there's been various theories over the year, including there were two detectives who were retired that showed up here from NYPD and basically got the people in Wisconsin to believe there was something called the Smiley face killer, which was a person who was luring these young men down to the river, possibly with the promise of sexual favors, and then pushing these people into the river, and they were drowning.
Right. And so then what did you uncover in your research?
Well, there were 30. We made open records requests of a lot of police departments, usually the areas of La Crosse, Superior, Wisconsin, Eau Claire. Now, those are places where we have our University of Wisconsin system, so the majority of these people were students. And I can tell you that the majority of these people who did die and were recovered from the rivers did have a high level of intoxication. But in about 4 or 5 of the cases, there were some suspicious circumstances that led to large police investigations. Possibly they were considering charges in 2 or 3, but none of those materialized.
Okay, now that's very interesting. Now, are these cases you worked on when you were a cop up there?
I reviewed some of them for some of the smaller departments when they had people who drowned, and unfortunately, a lot of these people who drowned were actually people who were from the Milwaukee area, parents who sent their kids to the University of Wisconsin system. And, the first year they're up there, they're young people, 18, 19 years of age, and they start to consume alcohol. Our culture in Wisconsin has always been very largely based on alcohol. We were for a large period of time the brewing capital of America. But, our drinking problems here are almost historic with our arrests for drunken driving and all kinds of other incidents related to alcohol.
Right. But you don't think that these are all alcohol-related deaths? You think they were lured out and murdered?
No, I don't. I think that some of them were clearly, young people who had just gone down to the river. In a couple of the cases, their pants were down, indicating, their zippers were down. Some of the theories involved, of course, sex, but it looks like they may have been urinating or trying to urinate into the rivers. A lot of them had disappeared. They were with groups of people. They had gone out and disappeared from the friends they were with. And when they were found, they still had, at the time of the autopsy, they still had large levels of alcohol in their system, some as high as 0.38. And, that in and of itself is almost fatal for some of these people. But we did have a few where there was just minimal amounts of alcohol, and those people seemed to, there was one case in which a young man had been chased into the river where rocks were being thrown at him and he drowned. That clearly wasn't related to the alcohol that was in his system. And there's several others where people were seen with friends and then suddenly disappeared. And to the credit of our police departments up here and our public safety officers, they put cameras and lights along the river because there was such a large amount of drownings. But there's been no video of anything suspicious that's ever been recovered with one of these deaths.
Okay, that's interesting. So, and what about, you hear these theories of it might be a cult activity or something like that? You didn't find anything like that?
No, and then a lot of these, when we went and talked to the local police officers or the friends of some of these victims, none of these people had any type of lurid or, unusual religious beliefs or cult-type behavior. They were just young people that had gone to the schools in our suburban communities and wound up, alcohol again being what it is for young people, were just out drinking and were, for some reason, found in the rivers not far from the taverns that they were last seen drinking in.
Well, then what was the purpose of your writing the book? To disprove this theory of the smiley face pattern?
Yes, that's basically it, Mr. Opperman. Again, being in law enforcement, we're fact-based here. And, a lot of this, just these rumors were just spreading, especially after these NYPD detectives showed up here and claimed that it was a smiley face serial killer that was luring these people down here, and it just sort of started a panic where even some of the schools themselves were starting to wonder about what was going on. And, in researching these, along with some of the students that I teach, we discussed all the possibilities. I talked this over with other law enforcement agencies and other professionals, and there isn't a large indication at all that there was ever a serial killer involved. Some of these go back to 1965. So even if there had been a serial killer, you consider the time span. This person would be so old by now that they probably still wouldn't be active, yet these are still occurring.
Yeah, a lot of people think, though, that it's a group, it's a pattern, because they even have these murders going on in Manchester, England, with these people getting, these young men. It's always young men, getting pushed into the water. Yeah. Some of the people we talk to, they claim that there's sometimes like an attraction when you're intoxicated with water. Now, I've never had that when I've been intoxicated, but then again, I've never been in the water when I'm intoxicated. So, in discussing some of these theories here, I talked to several of the medical examiners here, and they indicated that it's not unusual to get, very confused when you're intoxicated in the water. In other words, down becomes up and up becomes down, and these young men drowned. And then you got to consider the weather here in Wisconsin when a lot of these people were found. It's winter. So just the exposure to that water and winter air, right away they start suffering from large amounts of
hypothermia, things of that nature. So they're not going to be alive very long in the water.
That's interesting because just thinking back to my own life, my early 20s, late teens, you get drunk and right away, hey, let's go down to the lake. Let's what I mean?
Right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And, even when we look at some of these historically, like you had the death investigation of Natalie Wood, and we had other people up here in Wisconsin who basically drowned under what at least were suspicious circumstances. But, again, at night when you're in the water and you're intoxicated and all of a sudden, your body temperature starts to drop, these people aren't thinking like you or I are normally, where they'd be yelling for help or something. And unfortunately, some of the people that these young men were with were even more intoxicated than they were. So when they became lost, some of these guys, they just disappeared, and that was it.
Yeah, and even if they try and get them out of the water, they're making it worse. God only knows what they're doing. Speaking of Natalie Wood, though, did you look into that case?
A little bit. I talked to some people, and it is interesting. There's never been, just like in these cases here, when the medical examiner examined the body, there were no injuries to the throat area or to the face that would be consistent with some type of blunt force trauma. Some of these bodies one of the bodies here was cut up. And again, when the people from NYPD took a look at it, they basically spread the rumor that this kid was basically, cut up and thrown into the river. Yet at the time of the autopsy, when I read it, the theory is that this kid was hit by the props or the propellers on some type of a boat. And remember, they were in the river, which is very consistent with what was going on.
Right. Now, what about I know the two cops you're talking about from New York. One of his name is Gannon, I believe. In fact, we were just talking about him yesterday. I was doing another show. But now, what do you make of their theory about this pattern of water deaths with young men around the rest of the country? Have you looked into those?
I haven't yet. We're starting to take a look at those. And again, I don't want to start some type of a panic, but there's just never been any indication that there's some type of a serial killer or a group of people that are doing this. The people were interviewed. In other words, the I don't want to say eyewitnesses, but the people that these young men were with were interviewed. There was never indication of anything suspicious going on those evenings other than just a large consumption of alcohol.
And in the material you sent me, said that the book is called Staggered Paths. Yeah, Strange Deaths in the Badger State. That there's an update of a recent death up there.
Well, one of the cases we're looking at is a young man by the name of Luke Holman. And interestingly enough, when I was going to Marquette University, when I got out of high school, his father played for the Marquette Warriors under our legendary coach, Al McGuire. And his son, in 2006, had transferred to the University of Wisconsin's lacrosse, where he was playing basketball and baseball. And he was found in the river, drowned, during the winter months of 2006, and there was an individual with him by the name of Austin Scott. Now, Austin Scott was found before Luke Holman was by the police in a parking lot with injuries to his head and blood on his shoes. And he was actually taken to a detox center after they thought he was just intoxicated. And then later he started making some incriminating statements that he was with Luke Holman. And interestingly enough, they brought in a cadaver dog or a scent dog that traced both Austin Scott's scent and Luke Holman's scent to the same spot in the river where Luke Holman was subsequently recovered from. And they're taking a look at that case now after this book came out about the blood on the shoes and stuff, having it tested to see if there may have been some type of criminal activity. That is one of the more strange cases that we took a look at.
Okay, and you think that case may be reopened because of your book?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't want to take credit for that, but it's clearly they're taking a look at it now after the family has raised some more questions after talking with me and talking with some of the local investigators when this book came out.
Okay, that's fascinating. That's fascinating but you haven't looked into the ones in the rest of the country. What about Gannon's other theories? Yeah, have you looked into his other theories?
No, I haven't. And, I'll be honest with you, the local law enforcement up here that had dealings with Gannon they were sort of taken back by him. I think he came up here and indicated that he was an active New York police officer yet and that he was investigating some of these. And so he was given access to a lot of the files. And, so even when I wrote this, they were very hesitant. I'm still active law enforcement in Wisconsin about material they gave over to me. And I don't know if, again, I've lived here my whole life, so I bring in a little bit of a different expertise than I think Gannon did when he showed up here briefly from New York.
Yeah, you hear stories. Either people are hot or cold with Gannon, But representing yourself as active law enforcement is a big no-no. Okay, that could be a big problem. Yeah. Once you retire.
My understanding was when they called NYPD that not only did they say he's not active, but he wasn't a very good person to begin with when he was in New York. So take it for what it's worth.
Well, I'm trying to book him for the show. I think I just blew that, but okay.
Well, you never know. Some of these theories are so far out there, they're easy to debunk, and, it kind of makes you look a lot more credible, But, spreading fear is just not a good idea. I teach up at some of these local universities, or I give lectures once in a while, and I always get asked these questions. Like I said, there's just no indication of a serial killer, but yet there are some indications here of, suspicious activity in some of these deaths. One of the first ones we took a look at in 1965 was an individual named Stephen Capel, and all indications are he may have been gay, and that may have been the reason that he was found in the river with a cinder block tied around him and duct taped. And the police up there wrote that off as a suicide after they discovered that he was having some problems with, sexual identity. They initially wrote that off as a suicide. I thought that was very strange. And again, you got to remember back in '65, there was no such things as DNA, and even like forensic, autopsies and stuff were not conducted. They basically had a medical examiner who conducted a brief examination, listed the cause of death, but never really, went out and listed some of the other factors that were involved with these deaths.
Yeah, fascinating. Now, you mentioned, too, some of these strange, wild conspiracy theories. You're up there in Wisconsin. I'm sure you're familiar with the Avery case, right? And you commented, okay. Now, you comment on all different kind of cases, so I'm not throwing you a curveball here. I did invite you on to discuss the book, what is this thing here again? Staggered Paths, Strange Deaths in the Badger State. But, okay, I just had some guys on about this Avery case.
Yeah.
And it's the best one yet I've heard so far. Okay. Oh, my God, man. They're convinced it has something to do with Bill Clinton and the coke smuggling down in Mena Airport with Barry Seal. Because the Attorney General was appointed by Bill Clinton, the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin. All right, now what's the best one you've heard? Wait. Yeah. Are you going to write up? Yeah.
I think just the one that was going around here was, and it is interesting. I teach like a law class here, and when we do lineup procedures and what we call show-up procedures, they've all changed because of the first arrest of Stephen Avery, where he was misidentified and subsequently sent to jail. There is a problem. There was no question that he was innocent of the first sexual assault that he was sent to jail for. In fact, I know law enforcement has even admitted that there were mistakes with the identification and the subsequent conviction of him in court. But yet, when you're right, these theories that come up are just unbelievable. And the one that's best is that the cops actually killed Teresa Halbach, burned her, and then brought the remains and the burning material back to his farm and planted them on his farm, all because he had a pending lawsuit against law enforcement for the first misidentification and subsequent improper conviction in Wisconsin. And I mean, I've been involved with law enforcement my whole life. I travel across the country working on a television show. I lecture. In fact, I'm going to Florida next week. And it's just, I've never heard of anything as wild as some of these theories that are going on out there. It just doesn't happen. Does law enforcement make mistakes? Absolutely. Is it going to be something that's criminal and so sinister in nature? I don't think it is. I know you read across the country, they've had large-scale corruptions in Los Angeles and Miami, but, my experience with this, Mr. Opperman, and I hope you agree, is that law enforcement itself and our criminal justice system is 98% pure. So to come across something this unbelievable it just didn't happen.
Well, I'm a defense investigator. I wouldn't say 98%, but I'm not going to argue with you. But the thing is, it would have to be the only way to justify this theory of the setup of Avery is you're right. The cops or someone would have had to have killed her and then planted the body there. Because what other theory is there?
There isn't any theory. What we're waiting for now in law enforcement, and I'm sure it'll interest you as a defense investigator, is whether the confession that was given by Brendan Dassey, who is the nephew of Stephen Avery is going to be subsequently allowed to stand here. And, in that case, law enforcement went to his school to question him. He did call his mother. His mother showed up but wasn't in the room, and he made, incriminating statements during that interrogation. And they're now looking at his level of intelligence. And it's, he admitted to facts that only somebody involved with that case would know. And there were other things that came out that, and I don't know, if you've heard these, but there were indications, and I know they were true from talking to some of the investigators, that Stephen Avery had been sodomizing Brendan Dassey since he was a small kid, that there was all kinds of unusual and illegal sexual activity going on. And remember, this was on a junkyard in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. This is hardly like any type of a large-scale place where you'd come to start a conspiracy. And nothing is ever, everything that's checked out has always indicated that Stephen Avery is the person who did, in fact, kill Teresa Halbach. And I know that's contrary to people who watch Making a Murderer, but understand that was not unbiased when they did that. All of the evidence was not presented in that case.
Yeah, well, also, too, even at the time, during his lawsuit, there was another investigation going on of him molesting a relative, a female relative. Right. So they could have set him up with that case. If they want to set him up, they had him. Right. They had him right there.
Set him up. Why not just use dope? You just told me that they planted a kilo of dope or something in his farm, which would have got him sent away. Right? Okay, I can understand. But to go out and kill some innocent girl, you know what I'm saying? Burn her, bring the bones back, and yet all of this stuff. Remember, this was all done forensically, where they brought in our crime lab and they sifted for evidence. They looked for evidence. They used metal detectors. There's DNA involved here, and everybody's got a conspiracy on how something happened here. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's just as simple as the fact that Stephen Avery killed Teresa Halbach. He was sexually attracted to her. He had called her a number of times and asked that she specifically come out. She even mentioned to her bosses that she had, quote unquote, the creeps going back there and talking to this guy, and she never came back. Her Toyota RAV4 was found on his property. There was DNA, and a jury, found him guilty. And again, I know that for some people, they roll their eyes and claim it was that law enforcement here presented some type of a conspiracy, but this was, examined by impartial investigators from around the country. And like you said, the theories abound, but, every judge who's ever looked at this case has sustained the convictions.
And the thing is, too, is even if the cops or whoever the boogeyman is in this case, if they did stumble upon this poor woman's body and then they want to plant it on him, how would they know that he didn't have an alibi that night? You know what I mean? Or that he had called her.
It's amazing. I get young students, and I think they watch some of these television shows, and they get all these different ideas about what's going on in the world, and it just comes right back down to the simple facts and the simple evidence in these cases. These cases are so far overanalyzed in a lot of situations that they lead to these theories of what would Bill Clinton ever have any use for Stephen Avery for, attorney generals? Of all the people to pick, this guy's got the intelligence of a grapefruit. Honest to God, it just wouldn't fly.
And then it goes on to, we don't even need to indulge in that. But give me a little rundown. You said that there were flaws in the lineup in the original identification of Avery in the original case. What happened there?
Well, and again, in most states, law enforcement is allowed to use a identification technique called a show-up. And what people that's not a lineup. So for people who are a little bit familiar with law enforcement, everybody thinks it's a lineup. Well, a show-up is a one-on-one identification on the street. So in other words, let's say there's a crime. You and I are on patrol. We see an individual walking down the street who fits that description. We have reasonable suspicion at least to stop him because he fits that description. We stop him. We then call for the witness or the victim to come and take a look at him in a one-on-one situation. And if you're identified, that subsequently leads to probable cause, which leads to your arrest. In Avery's case, with that first sexual assault, the victims were allowed to view him on the street. and they identified him. And later on, when defense investigators went to talk to him after he appealed his conviction, and remember, there was no DNA that was initially tested. That was the one thing. But when they went back and looked at the identification procedure, a lot of the people said, well, it had to be him. Why else did the police have stopped him? And the police are standing around him, so they knew he was guilty. So, of course, I said it was him.
Right.
Yet when they asked, was he the guy you saw? There were people who weren't sure. There were people who looked through fences. They had, views that were obscured. And later on, they admitted that. And then subsequently, when DNA was tested, it wasn't, to Avery's defense, it wasn't his DNA, and somebody else was subsequently identified and later convicted of that first sexual assault.
Yes, so now you're saying that that's no longer allowed? It's no longer policy in the...
Do it in Wisconsin. I don't know, in the state, they can probably still do it, but we did have an eyewitness identification task force that said, what we have to do now, you and I are on patrol, there's a description of a suspect, we see him on the street, we at least have reasonable suspicion, probably probable cause, because he fits that description. We now have to arrest that person and then put him in a lineup, which is run sequentially with at least 3 fillers so that the identification procedure is more fair. So in other words, we now bring that person to a police station or a law enforcement facility and get fillers, people who are dressed in a similar fashion, look, somewhat similar, and they're then placed into a sequential lineup.
Gotcha. Now you teach a class.
Yes.
What kind of class?
Well, I teach law, and then I teach like death investigations and homicide investigations. I worked on the Jeffrey Dahmer case here in Wisconsin, so a lot of people started to get interested in that. And, that case is like that's how old I am. I mean, that case is like over 30 years old already. For God's sake,
I guess I'm old too.
Unbelievable, Yeah, but so I started with that, and then when I retired, I was running the homicide division. I was supervising the homicide division, so I kind of got thrown into teaching law enforcement. Now I teach students who want to be police officers along with law enforcement and death investigations, and that's subsequently how I landed my role as a detective or an investigator on cold justice.
Now, Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, you worked on that case. You worked on some of his victims.
Right.
Now, what did you discover with him? What about any kind of occult involvement with Jeffrey Dahmer?
No, Dahmer, again, he was just basically a lone wolf type guy. He wasn't well educated, but yet he had a street PhD. He could talk to people, and he just had that conniving ability to lie to people about what was going on. His basic MO for getting young men to his house is that he had business cards printed that indicated that he was a movie producer. So he would show up at some of the gay taverns in Milwaukee. He'd find, victims that appeared vulnerable, people who didn't have a lot of money, and he would give them a business card and tell them he was a producer. And then, how gullible some people are. Dahmer didn't even have a car, so they would take a bus back to his apartment, and Dahmer would basically give the people some money to pose naked. He had a video camera mounted to the wall, an actual movie camera that wasn't recording, but people didn't know that. And he would subsequently just, loosen their inhibitions with alcohol that was laced with sleeping pills, and once they would pass out, he'd drill holes in their heads, pour muriatic acid, and then have sex with the bodies. He called them compliant zombies, and eventually he would kill the victims.
Now, how was he able to get away with all that in an apartment with neighbors nearby? There's a drill going off every time.
That was an interesting question, but I'll tell you what. Again, he was such a private person. When we initially did what we call the canvass, we went around and knocked on the building, asking people about his activity. There were people who didn't even know who he was. I mean, he was that quiet of a guy. He didn't have loud parties. He didn't have a car. He didn't cause any problems. Didn't have a barking dog. I mean, he was just a person who resided in this apartment and was kind of, he was kind of an individual who was almost secretive about what he did. He took a bike to work. He worked at a place called Ambrosia Chocolate, which makes, chocolate, surprisingly. And then he would bike home, and basically, some of his first endeavors with death were that he would pick up animals on the street that had been, run over by cars or dead, and he would take them home, and he said he would cut them up to see what made them work, and then he would, what he said was experiment with them. He denied ever having sex with any of the animals, but he said he had fantasies, and he started to use the animals, and once that fantasy grew, he had to go to human beings, which subsequently led to the fact that he came up with this false identity and was luring people back to his apartment.
Did you ever look into his activity when he was down in Florida?
We did, and I do a television show with John Walsh, and I got a phone call from somebody down there about Adam Walsh.
Right.
And Dahmer, when he was probably one of the most honest people that I've ever seen in an interrogation room. He started from the beginning and didn't stop talking until he laid out every single thing he did. And there was no indication. He was actually in Arizona for a while. He was in Florida. He actually, the most interesting story he told was that the first time he killed somebody it was a young man by the name of Stephen Hicks in Ohio, Bath Township, Ohio, where his parents lived. And he said he saw Stephen Hicks hitchhiking. He was sexually attracted to him, but he was still fairly young at the time, and he didn't know how to approach this kid. So Hicks was hitchhiking. He picked up Hicks, took him home. Again, he started to use the alcohol, and he got Hicks drunk. And then at one point, Hicks wanted to leave, so he used a weight bar to kill him. He hit him in the head a number of times. Right. Said he fondled him. He didn't have a full blown intercourse with him, but there was some sexual gestures. And he put him in the back of his car. And on the way to a field where he was going to bury him, he was stopped by the local police with the body in the back underneath a tarp. And we didn't believe that. But when we checked the records from NCIC, which show all types of traffic stops and contacts with law enforcement, sure enough, there it was. And the cop actually gave him a break for the traffic violation and let him go on with the body of Stephen Hicks in the back of the car. It's just it's so unfortunate because he was let go, and then he continued on this killing spree into Milwaukee.
It's just when you hear these stories, guys, he's killing a guy, he's putting him in the back of the truck, and he runs into the cops. I can't even buy a 6-pack of beer without running into the pastor of my church. You know what I mean? And how these guys, how do they get away with this?
And probably one of the more unfortunate aspects with the Dahmer investigation is that at one point there was a 14-year-old Asian kid wandering down the street that was naked, bleeding from his head. A neighbor had called law enforcement, and it was a July night in Wisconsin. I know a lot of people, roll their eyes when you hear the story, but the cops that night were so overworked. They got sent to this. They stopped this kid. His name was Connor Samphone. He was 14 years of age. He was bleeding, but they didn't know he had a hole drilled into his head. And as they're trying to communicate with him, Dahmer walks up and says, "Hey, that's my lover. We had a fight. Is it okay if I take him back in the apartment?" And law enforcement turned him back over to Dahmer, who said later on, about 3 hours later, after having sex with the kid, he killed him. And, anytime you look at a serial killer case across the country, whether it's Green River or BTK or Dahmer or Bundy, even Gacy, there was red flags all over the place. Yeah. And, that's how we learn. But law enforcement, like any other occupation, makes mistakes, and unfortunately sometimes they're fatal.
Hey, are you familiar with the recent new revelations in the Gacy case, where the DNA does not match one of the victims? A victim has been misidentified.
Actually, it's interesting. I went to a missing persons convention, and there was some indications about that. Again, DNA, dental records weren't. And when that happened again, he was running, from what I remember, a landscape or some type of a business where a lot of these young people were involved with, part-time work, and that should have been a big red flag right off the bat. In fact, law enforcement had been to his house, and Casey, from what I remember, talking to some of these cops, allowed them to search the house because he had the bodies actually secreted, in the crawl space of the house, so they weren't going to find it. He had like a secret trap door to get into it, and law enforcement actually searched the house, and they kind of wrote Gacy off as a suspect. But yes, I've heard that. In fact, I know one of the victims, the mothers, had claimed that right from the beginning that the person that law enforcement turned over to her was not her son, and I saw that this kid was just positively identified within the past few months.
Yeah, I'm in touch with her lawyer, and there's a lot of stuff going on with that. There was a pedophile and child trafficker who lived right down the block from Gacy. And when he was arrested, they lost his little black book that had as many as 4,000 entries in it with the little boys and clients and all kinds of stuff like that. And they lost the evidence.
I don't know how that happens. You know, you hear these stories, and it's almost embarrassing sometimes what the mistakes law enforcement made. But you know, again, things get passed around, and I think, you know, until you looked at the O.J. Simpson case, until Simpson hit the stage, you know, forensic evidence and crime scene processing was not what it is, you know, today, and that's how we learn, where we go out and make these mistakes.
But back to Dahmer for a second, though. Did you uncover that? Because when he was living down there in Florida, in the back of that pizzeria place, the pizza sub place, in their utility room, that he discovered, and he called into the police, he discovered a dead body at the dumpster, right, and he reported that. And then what is that?
I don't know, but I know that was looked at, and he was ruled out as a suspect. I mean, you know, it is amazing, isn't it, how some of these guys are just kind of like, you know, magnets for trouble, and they just, you know, it's just amazing that, you know, like I said, he gets stopped. What are the odds of the police stopping you with a dead body in your car and letting you go without searching it? You know, I mean, but he was a master manipulator. I'll tell you, you know, the greatest skill he had was just being able to talk to people and read people and tell them what they wanted to hear. And like I said, the night in question, he talked this 14-year-old kid out of the hands of two very experienced police officers, and subsequently killed him.
And what about you hear these stories that he had a satanic altar in his apartment there?
You know, he didn't believe in God. He believed in a higher being, and he would pray to these statues, these gargoyles, these figurines. But you know, he wasn't a devil worshiper or anything like that. He was, you know, I know that unfortunately, had he not been killed in prison, that the FBI had come down here a number of times and wanted to talk to him because of his cannibalism. You know, he was probably one of you look at serial killers across the country, and he was one of the very few that engaged in cannibalism. And they wanted to talk to him, but unfortunately, Dahmer, being what he was up in prison acting as some type of a cleanup guy, and he wandered into the weight room one day, and one of the other prisoners up there grabbed a weight bar and killed him with it. You know, anytime you have a high-profile prisoner in jail, they become likely targets, you know, based on what they've done and just the fact that somebody else is going to gain notoriety, and he was killed in prison. But, you know, the family, to show you how bad things can get, the mother and father of Jeffrey Dahmer were divorced. And it started the minute that he was arrested. They each retained lawyers and wanted to protect their own property rights for things like books and movies, you know, DNA studies, things like that. I mean, it was almost unbelievable when you start getting a room full of lawyers arguing about ridiculous things and him being tested and you know, it was almost embarrassing. Even the judges were arguing in Milwaukee about which judge would take the case because they wanted to write a book about it.
And it's ironic too that he would be killed with a barbell when one of his first murders was with a barbell. Yeah.
It is. You know, it is ironic, and you know, you're right. You know, the way he dies is basically the way he killed his first victim.
It was the first victim. I was going to say that, but that would have been too ironic. And so, what are you working on in Cold Justice on the Oxygen Channel? What do you got coming up?
We got a couple of cases. I worked on one in Flint, Michigan, where it was, I don't want to say it was a gang, but it was a couple of guys that were out basically robbing and shooting people. And at one point, as Flint, Michigan began to get poor, street robberies, the victims didn't have a lot of money. So one of the suspects, they decided to kill the mother of his girlfriend, and they made a couple of attempts. And honest to God, this woman, she reported it to law enforcement a couple of times, the attempts on her life. No suspects were ever developed. And then subsequently, she came home from bowling one night, and the individual who was later arrested was waiting for her in the backyard and came up and basically shot her 5 times, took her purse for $130,000 in insurance money, which they went through in like a year. And, you know, a lot of times, I don't know, you know, like we're 90 miles from Chicago, and to see the large influence these gang members have on some other people is almost astounding sometimes. But that's what happened. You know, Flint, Michigan is just, it's almost like, I mean, despair is normative in every location where we were in Flint. It's really a sad state right now, a sad place to live.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you hear those stories about the water. They still don't have running water.
Yeah, they had water distribution locations everywhere we went. We go into apartments, we go into houses, and the sad thing, I kind of thought this was recent. In other words, that this had, this was a recent problem when they reversed the river and started using different delivery methods. But they're now testing and finding that they think this may have gone on for 10, 12 years already. So a lot of people were probably exposed to lead before they even realized there was a problem.
It's just, it's heartbreaking. How can we live in a country where we can't provide drinking water to the little kids living in Michigan?
I was thinking the same thing, Mr. I mean, it's almost like a third world country. You got to go there. The number of abandoned houses, businesses that left, you'd have thought you were in, like you said, some third world country where you can't, it's just unbelievable. And violent crime. The police department starts there paying $15 an hour. So, I mean, for the average person to go and start a job where you've got violent crime all over, risking your life for $15 an hour, they cannot even hire police officers to fill the open positions they've got right now.
Oh, no, you're not going to attract the cream of the crop for $15 an hour. I can't hire someone to clean my house for $15 an hour.
To think about buying a house there with the water problems and the school problems, it's really not attractive to anybody at all.
Now, I'm looking at your bio here. In 2001, you graduated from the FBI National Academy, right? So you have a little bit of FBI training. Now, what do you make of and it's kind of a curveball, but what do you make of this search warrant at Paul Manafort's house, a pre-dawn search warrant what do you make?
I'll tell you this much. When we did the pre-dawn search warrants, these were like armed gangbangers. Yeah. The theory was they're still going to be in bed. Sometimes the FBI, I know that a lot of people are going to kind of roll your eyes, but, a lot of those people, when you look at their bios, they're accountants, they're lawyers, I don't know how experienced they actually are in police work. And to do a pre-dawn raid, I don't know what theory they thought they would be in danger for, basically looking for documents and computers, but some judge authorized it and they went out there and did it. And I'll tell you, search warrants sometimes, you got to understand, it sometimes is like a breadcrumb trail. It may not be Manafort they're looking at. They might be looking at somebody else, and sometimes they just do this to shake up other people. We used to call it like tickling the wire and stuff. But, in other words, if I wanted to get to you, I might start making raids of friends, relatives, just to kind of get you shaken up to see what you're going to do next. So you never know what the FBI is going to do. They're very good at conducting complex financial and paper trails. So let's see what they come up with here with this search warrant. But it sure sounds like he was a cooperating witness. So I don't know why they would raid his house.
Yeah, and his son-in-law has an open case right now, some kind of Ponzi scheme. With this kind of focus, though, do you think these people have any kind of chance at all?
No. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know what they've got. Let's face it. When some of these legal battles get drawn out, you get into the courtroom, and some of the best lawyers I've ever seen, one of their tactics is just to drag things on for as long as you possibly can. So you never know if you're going to have a conviction. And of course, a lot of these don't even result in any type of indictments for the original charges that were being investigated. So, we had one here of our governor, and it subsequently led to the arrest of an individual who was stealing money from an organization that he worked in. It had nothing to do at all with the alleged corruption from the governor at the end. They basically came up with nothing on that, but they were able to find something else. And so these investigations can get really drawn out and complex.
Yeah, and once you're under that kind of scrutiny, like everyone has made some kind of mistake, and no one's pure driven snow.
No.
Yeah. Now, in the series, go ahead.
Yeah, when you start looking at some of these election violations and donations and stuff, I mean, it's almost to the point of splitting hairs.
Yeah. And Manafort, he's doing all that stuff too with the LLCs, buying property, suspicious property deals.
I don't know. I don't know what they're going to come up with, but you're involved in politics. Of all the jobs I ever thought about, that's got to be the most dirty one to get involved with. So let's see what happens.
That's so true. And they're going to come up with something. Now, in your series of books, Best of the Spingola Files, Volume 1 and 2, what would we find in there?
Those are just interesting cases. I worked on little tidbits, things that happened during my career in law enforcement, sort of like war stories, as some people would talk about. But there were interesting cases in there that were worked on that we looked at. A couple of murders where some of the kids were missing and we've never found. But some of them are almost humorous, where mistakes were made by law enforcement, or people just went out and kind of got themselves into some type of trouble. I suppose people read all the time about misconduct of law enforcement, but sometimes people just they have the knack to go out and just get into trouble because they're bored. And even in law enforcement, occasionally, that type A personality drives some people to go out and do some kind of ridiculous things.
You got a couple examples?
Well, one of the stories that was discussed in there was a couple of cops showed up at a local cemetery one night in January in Wisconsin. Very cold. They had a bottle of Jack Daniels, so they're out there drinking, and they're in a cemetery, and they look over at one point after they've been drinking for a while. There's about 6 or 8 cops in the cemetery, and they see a hole in the ground where it's covered up because they're going to have a funeral the next day. So there's a large sheet of plywood on it. So these cops get on it, and this became known as our toboggan team later on. They started pushing each other down the hill in the cemetery, and basically at one point they push a cop down, and this hill is getting more and more icy as they're pushing it down. He winds up hitting a headstone and getting thrown through the air, and he's got a punctured lung with one of the ribs resting against his pericardial sac. So they panic, and they call for a supervisor who should have done the right thing, but he decides to cover everything up, and they threw him into a car, and they took him to a different location and faked a foot chase and threw him down a hill. And they actually had they made 2 footprints in the snow. I mean, they covered their trails pretty good. They got rid of the liquor, and they basically had it covered pretty good. And a month later, some cop who was leaving work sees another cop leaving work with his girlfriend and decides to call in a man with a gun call. Again, don't ask me why. But when they found out he was a cop, and they subsequently traced back the phone call through the cell phone records, it came back to another cop who they were going to actually arrest. And how this goes. When he basically says, look, you don't arrest me, I'll tell you something you want to know. And he spilled the whole story of how they had gone back and covered up the footprints and, replaced the sheet of wood back up on top of the grave. And I mean, it was just an unbelievable thing that happened. But, I remember one night the cops in Milwaukee, a neighbor had woken up and saw a number of squad cars parked in their neighborhood and called the local district and said, hey, is it safe to go outside? I want to go to work. And they said, well, yeah, what's going on? They said, well, there's squad cars all over. This was before GPS or anything. And they had gone, they sent the supervisor over to see what was going on, and the cops had broken into an abandoned bowling alley and were having a bowling tournament using flashlights and things of that nature to light up and heat the building because it was winter. So they were having the bowling roll off when the supervisor walked in, and everybody in the district had participated in it at one point. I mean, it's just unbelievable, some of the stuff, the trouble that guys can get into when they're bored.
It has to be the Milwaukee beer, right? It has to be.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I don't know. It's our culture here. I'll tell you that. And even Miller though here is having some problems. I think our beer sales are actually down a little bit.
Well, I haven't had a beer in a while. I better put some stock, raise their stock up for him. I had a guest on the show one time. He tells a story. He was a Las Vegas homicide detective. That they went on a well check to check into a house, and they had to break in the door, and so they bust in the door, and they see a guy sitting on a chair holding a gun. So his partner shoots the guy. All right.
Yeah.
It was a suicide. The guy committed suicide. He was sitting there dead already.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's just, and sometimes, when it is embarrassing. You try to, I know a lot of people read newspapers, and all of a sudden they'll say, yeah, police are investigating a death act, And I've had here, things where, I had a group of kids, college students living in a house for trying to, with the rent, they were all paying a portion of it. So some guy picks up a girl one night and wants to go home and do the wild thing, but the whole house is full of guys. So they went out into the garage, and again, this is winter, in Wisconsin where the temperature is like 5 or 10 above. They went into the garage, they started the car, they stripped down, and right as they were about to perform, they were overcome by carbon monoxide poisoning, and even the guy who died still had an erection as he was laying there. You know, he was frozen now. And, you know, people just, I don't think, sometimes think, you know, of what can happen, what can be the outcomes of some of their actions.
Yeah, nobody thinks, man. And again, it's the beer again, too, probably. And you mentioned in a couple of books, so You Got to Be Dirty, the Outlaw Motorcycle Club in and around Wisconsin. What's going on with that?
Well, it's an interesting, there's a couple of people that have been working on cases here, and again, I don't know in your state if you've got, we have the Outlaws here in Wisconsin. They basically started because Milwaukee is, you know, the home of Harley-Davidson, Milwaukee Iron, and we had some motorcycle gangs that started up here, and the Outlaws basically were very prevalent, and they were involved in a number of, you know, it started off with things like extortions and thefts from Harley-Davidson, and it just progressed to murders later on, and some of these cases were very interesting. They knew a little bit about things like, I think, forensics and recovering bodies. They burned them, and I'll tell you, some of the murders that they were involved in were some of the most violent I've ever seen. We've had people in Illinois and stuff that were members of the Outlaws who were set to testify against other members, and they were found with things like screwdrivers and stuff stuffed down their throats. They were always a gang that was, you know, they were very intimidating, including the prosecutors and law enforcement. So, I mean, they made the mafia basically look like Girl Scouts at some points here. You know, they were just unbelievably ruthless, and they had access. And I think part of the problem we had here with the Outlaws is that the women they would hook up with, a lot of them worked in different fields in law enforcement or, you know, the criminal justice field, so they had some ideas of what was going on with the investigations into them.
Yeah, and they're always involved in the strip clubs, too, so they seem to blackmail dirt.
What a money-making place, the strip clubs. You're exactly right here. We've got a place in Wisconsin, it's called the Airport Lounge. That's what they owned, and they were always involved with, you know, drugs for a while, and then it just kind of progressed to other things, boat theft, motorcycle theft. Even when we had the Harley-Davidson Fest here, we had record numbers of Harleys stolen by these guys. They'd steal a van, they'd just pull up on the street, grab a cycle, throw it in, and take off.
Wow. And the other one is the Milwaukee Mafia. You have Mafia up there in Milwaukee, Italian Mafia?
We didn't have a lot. We had the Balistreri family was always alleged to have been involved with some of the more, you know, underhanded you know, things, but we never had large scales. Some of the people we had here were involved with vending operations and things of that nature, but we clearly weren't like the New Yorks or the Chicagos. You know, we have a place here, if anybody's ever in Wisconsin, it's called Lake Geneva, and it's really an interesting place. It's where a lot of the members of the Mafia came and hid for a while. In fact, that's why they filmed the Johnny Depp movie here. I think it was the gangster movie. I forgot what the name of it was, just off the tip of my tongue.
The one about Whitey Bulger?
Yeah, that was it. They would hide out here in the Lake Geneva area, and some of these houses that are right on the lake, because it was a very nice area, they still have underground tunnels and passageways that are like secret, and it's just like a really interesting area to go take a look at, where these outlaws had different, these gangsters had different ways of getting out of those houses should the FBI ever show up.
Yeah, but it's too cold for the real mafia. All those guys got suntans all the time, right? They don't let
it. It is. Most of them were, you know what I'm saying. But, yeah, you know, occasionally, you know, they got a few people that were up here. We've got some history of the Chicago gang showing up here. And then, you know, Prohibition showed up, and we became slowly the beer capital of America. But that was based on our rivers and some of the, you know, just the fact that we had ample, you know, we were near Chicago and things of that nature.
Right. Okay, so we only got a couple of minutes left. How can people find you if they want to read your books and watch you on Cold Justice Oxygen? When is that on?
Yeah, Cold Justice is on it's 7 o'clock Central on Saturday nights. We have 4 different investigators. I'm not on this week that appear. I'm not even sure which show is being aired this week. I have a website. As you mentioned, it's on Badger Wordsmith. It's called the Spingola Files, where I talk a little bit about some of the cases. And then I have a Twitter account, Milwaukee Spinny at Twitter. You can get a hold of me. But like I said, I'm easy to find on the internet. I'm, Steve Spingola. I'm the only Spingola in Milwaukee with that name, Steve. And so I even get people who call me a lot after I do a show. Some of the sad things, they'll send me cases where their daughters or something are missing, or they're murdered and want to know if the show can work on it. And it isn't what we pick at those shows. Sometimes it's if law enforcement will cooperate and if there's enough reports. I mean, some of these cases that go back to 65, like I said, there's just not enough police reports to go up there and even start an investigation. But it's amazing to me. I was just in Arizona, and they have 1,300 missing kids. Can you believe it? 1,300 missing kids. Some of them are cold, but and a few I'm sure are runaway. But that's just one state. You hear these; it's just almost unbelievable.
What ages? What age range?
There's anywhere from like 9 all the way up to like 17, 18 where they look for. And a lot of those kids, they run to L.A. or they hook up. The internet has just provided such an access for a lot of these kids to run away and get into trouble. It's unfortunate, but when you start getting missing kids, and I'm not here to talk about illegal immigration, but that's part of the problem we've had is that these. The people show up here and they continue to move on, and these kids, once they're lost, it's awfully hard to track down family to figure out exactly what's going on. And so it's, between the internet and sometimes smaller police departments, we don't come up with a lot of information that's very helpful in locating some of these missing kids.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I know, man, and it's heartbreaking too because they do call you up and they want you to help with these cases, and you can't.
And they cry. And with these people, I mean, some of them you see they age, they start suffering from heart and cancers and stuff. You can just see how they degenerate once they're kids. I understand that. I mean, to the average person, I'm sure we've all had moments where you go to a parade or a ball game or something, you turn around, your kid's gone, and your heart just sinks into your stomach.
Right.
But for a lot of people, it's never solved.
Steven Spingola, thank you so much, okay? If you ever got something you want to promote, give me a call, put you right on the air. Thank you, Steven. And now a word from our sponsors. Archival Revival, the Christian Film Archive, is currently paying for vintage Christian films. They are dedicated to preserving and restoring classic Christian films and media. So if you have an original prints, negatives, or other film elements of classic Christian films, or you have audio recording masters for classic Christian record albums, they want to buy them from you. So email archival.revival@gmail.com, and they're going to make you an offer. Archival Revival wants to preserve these classic Christian films so that they continue saving people for years. These films have brought people to salvation. They want to continue that. Their staff has decades of experience in handling and preserving of film elements, and they utilize the very best climate-controlled film storage facilities around the world. Contact them today at archival.revival@gmail.com. If there's someone you know has these prints, negatives, recording masters, or other materials from vintage Christian films, you can check out their blog at archivalrevival.blogspot.com. Now, just so you understand, Archival Revival wants to pay you for these films. So you can look in your church attic, in the church basement. If you have a friend who runs a Christian youth ministry or these youth vacation Bible study camps, they have these old films in those big metal containers, 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter. Archival Revival wants to buy them from you. So this is a sponsor that actually wants to give you money. And all you have to do is contact them, tell them what you have. If you're in the UK or Ireland or Africa, these films are all over the world, and they're gathering dust, and they're going to deteriorate if they don't get into the hands of Archival Revival. So that's archival.revival@gmail.com, or the blog spot is archivalrevival.blogspot.com. Don't forget, this show is brought to you by pscoco.com. Phoebe Sod is an independent curator with the Cocoa Exchange. The Cocoa Exchange is formerly known as Dove Chocolate Discoveries, and they make the finest silky smooth chocolate because the products start with the best cocoa beans, which are tested for quality and flavor by expert technicians. The Cocoa Exchange offers not just premium chocolates, but anything from sauces and spices to brownie and cake mixes, and even coffee and martini mixes. If you wish to treat yourself or someone you love to a sweet and tasty gift, then the Cocoa Exchange is the brand for you. So you go to pscoco.com, you click on the Shop Now button. You can see all their beautiful chocolates. You can order it right now tonight. It could be in your mailbox in a couple of days. Or if you want to get into the chocolate business, you want to be a chocolatier just like Phoebe Sod, you can click the Contact Us button, and you can learn how to get your own website, go into the cocoa chocolate business, and sell chocolate and make a little bit of money there. Remember, all these shows on Awake are brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. But you also do all the kind of different services for you. An online dating service investigation. It's called an online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us your husband or your boyfriend, your girlfriend's email address, and we trace it back to their online dating websites, and we return a list of all the dating sites that email is registered to. We can expand on that investigation and trace it back to porn sites, escort service sites, swinger sites, even gambling websites, and even prescription drug websites. If you think your ex-husband or something is addicted to prescription medication or involved in a extreme online pornography addiction, we can produce a report for you that you can use in court. Adoption investigations. If you want to locate your birth parents or your birth child you gave away for adoption, we can do adoption investigations for you. Asset searches for you. Locate bank accounts, hidden assets, hidden properties, hidden income, all different kinds of services in the asset search investigation. Email tracing. If you need to locate or identify somebody from just an email address, we can do an email trace investigation for you, and all kinds of digital forensics. Where we can recover deleted content from an email or a hard drive and produce a report for you that you can use in court. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com.
Freedom Radio. It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And here is investigator Ed Up.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. This portion of the show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. Go to emailrevealer.com, get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator, but also to any kind of investigative needs. You need an asset search, a locate. You're trying to collect child support. You need to locate somebody's employment. And locate their hidden assets, hidden bank accounts, all that kind of one. Oh, speaking of hidden bank accounts, we have our next guest is the great Sarah Jane Woodall, Wonder Hussy. Website is wonderhussy.com. Hey, there she is. I love this girl, Wonder Hussy. And her YouTube channel is getting better by the day. This thing is getting so freaking awesome. I can't even stop myself. You start watching one Sarah Jane Woodall, Wonder Hussy YouTube video of her adventures, and you're there 3 hours later. You're watching them all. Sarah, my dear, how are you?
I'm doing really good, Ed. Really good.
Oh, okay. Does that mean you found something?
Well, no, but I'm having a good time looking for it.
Okay. Hey, Sarah, remind the audience, who is Sarah Jane Woodall?
Well, I'm just sort of a directionless bum. I don't know. I like adventuring, exploring the desert, exploring all the weird little places, mostly out in the Mojave Desert around Vegas, Death Valley. But I've recently expanded my scope to the Rocky Mountains, which is where I am right now.
Okay, Sarah Jane Woodall. This is her third appearance back on the show. The first time we had her on just to tell us about what a fascinating character Sarah Jane Woodall is. Then the second time, I think the second time was about the Barker Ranch. You went up to visit Was it Charles Manson family hiding at this Barker Ridge?
Oh, yeah.
Sarah Jane Woodall gets into a truck with a stranger, goes up there in the middle of the night, hikes up to this ranch all by herself and films it all and tells us it's up in the members section. Cool stuff. What an adventure. Then the third time she comes on, she goes to a week silent retreat. What was that?
So I did a 10-day Vipassana Buddhist meditation retreat. Totally silent. Yeah, it was a trip.
Yeah, and I remember the picture you posted right after you did that. Like your face looked all glowing, like you definitely had an effect on you, right? Or maybe that was something else.
Thank you, Ed.
Maybe that was something else, right, to cause the glow. Now, and also too, Sarah, one of the big things you do is this modeling. People can hire you to model for them for the day. They can take you out to the desert and take pictures of you. How does that work?
Well, Ed, for $500, I will pick you up at your hotel and drive you around to 3 or more beautiful desert locations and pose nude at each one for tasteful, artistic nudes. And then I'll bring you back to your hotel, all within the scope of an 8-hour day.
Now, that's incredible. Now, how much does it cost just without a nude model, without a fascinating, brilliant person like Sarah Jane Woodall, one of the most beautiful people in Las Vegas, by the way, and this is one of the most beautiful women in Las Vegas. You may not know it, but you know who Sarah Jane Woodall is, because if you ever see one of those pictures of those showgirls, she's like in 90% of those pictures. And also, too, she has this famous viral photo that she hates to talk about, but I love to talk about it. She's complaining about her mortgage was upside down, and she has one of the sign holding up there, and it went hugely viral. So everyone knows Sarah without even knowing who she is. But check out wonderhussy.com because she's also an author and a blogger. Brilliant stuff. Really incredible stuff. Sarah Jane Woodall. But Sarah, how much does it cost to just rent one of those pink trucks, the Jeeps that take you out to the desert with no nude model?
I don't even know how much those guys charge, but I definitely think I'm not charging enough because, I'm basically providing the pink Jeep tour service, but you get just a little extra pink, if you know what I mean. So maybe I my rates, I'm not sure. But, I feel like it's a good, honest day's work for what I do, and I've been doing it for a few years now. I've met some really wonderful, interesting people doing it. And, it gets me out in the fresh air. I love the desert. I really get off on showing visitors to Vegas the other side of Nevada, right? Like people go to Vegas, they go, oh, it's just the Strip. Well, no, it's not. There's all this crazy, beautiful stuff right, less than an hour from the Strip. And so, part of the reason I do what I do is I really enjoy turning people onto that.
Yeah, that's so true. People don't realize the hiking trails we have out here, Red Rock, and these beautiful hot springs. You're really into the hot springs, too, right? You know where all the secret hot springs are.
Tons of them, and there's some really good ones right outside Vegas.
So now, right now, you're in New Mexico, and you're trying to find Taos, New Mexico, and you're trying to find hidden treasure. How'd you hear about this?
Okay, so I don't know, most of your listeners, or many of your listeners, probably already know about this. There's this eccentric art dealer in Santa Fe who hid a treasure chest full of ancient artifacts, jewelry, coins, gold nuggets, all kinds of stuff, said to be valued upwards of $2 million. And he's hidden it somewhere in the Rocky Mountains north of Santa Fe. And it's been out there for about 7 years. No one has found it yet. And I probably heard about it initially a few years ago, but I didn't really seriously consider going to look for it until earlier this summer. I thought, well, hell, 7 years, no one's found it. Well, I have just as good a chance as anyone. Let's go. So my sister and I came out here, and we are looking for the treasure, which is known as the Fenn treasure, because the guy who hid its name is Forrest Fenn.
Yeah, and I tried to get a hold of him to get him to come on the show, and just like you said, he doesn't want to talk to me. But
yeah, he doesn't do a lot of he's 87 years old now, man. He doesn't do a lot of media interviews anymore.
Yeah, I know. He made that clear. Now, so what kind of research are you doing to find this treasure? You're not just walking around in circles. Do you have a map?
Well, yeah, so the way you're supposed to crack this code and figure out where the treasure is he's written this poem, which you can find online. And it took him 15 years to write this poem, right? So every word in this poem is very carefully considered. And within the poem, it's a short poem, there's 9 clues that if you can figure them out will supposedly lead you directly to the treasure, right? So, of course, I've been reading this poem over and over again, trying to figure out what exactly did he mean by this word? So So there are clues that kind of lead you. I mean, he has said himself that the treasure is somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. It's in either Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, or New Mexico. It's between, I think, 5,000 and 10,000 feet in elevation. It's not anywhere near the Rio Grande. I don't know. If you go online, you'll find all these interviews that he's given where he's released like, additional information. So using that, you can kind of narrow down the search area a bit. But even then, yeah, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of square miles of territory to search. So I don't know, man. I'm having fun looking for it. Will I find it? Who can say? But I did get a chance to meet with him in person last week at his home in Santa Fe. He invited my sister and I over. It was very kind of him. So I got to meet him. I got a sense of the kind of person that he is, and he seems like a super, super cool person. So I know a lot of people have been telling me, like, well, that's a hoax. There's not really any treasure out there. I don't know, man. Like, I got the sense from him that he doesn't seem like the kind of person that would mess around. I think it's real.
Now, what was his motivation for hiding the treasure?
Well, here's the story. Back in 1988, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, kidney cancer. And they gave him I think he had like a 20% chance of living, whatever. So rather than just, go out with a whimper, he decided to go out with a bang and load up all his most prized, valuable artifacts that he's found over his career as an art dealer and sort of like an archaeologist as well. And he would take this treasure box full of all his favorite stuff and just kind of walk out into the forest and die. Because he'd rather die in his favorite spot in the woods than in a hospital bed, right? So the plan was he'll take this treasure out, he'll lay down beside it, he'll die, and then, however many years later, someone will eventually stumble on his bones and take the chest. Well, his cancer went into remission. And, 20 years later, he goes, well, gee, I guess I might as well hide that treasure anyways. Why not? I got to leave some kind of a legacy. So he went ahead sometime around 2010. He's very cagey about when exactly he hid it. And he's also very careful to say that he hid it, not buried it. So we don't know if it's buried or just under a rock. Anyways, he went out around 2010 and hid this treasure somewhere. At that time, he was about 80 years old, 79, 80 years old. So wherever it is, it's in a place that an 80-year-old man could get to, carrying a 40-pound treasure. That's what it weighs, supposedly. So that kind of also informs the areas where you would look, right? It's got to be someplace that an 80-year-old man, and he said also in interviews that it took him 2 trips from his car, and it took 1 afternoon to hide it. So he made 2 trips from his car in 1 afternoon, carrying a 40-pound treasure at the age of 80. All right? That limits the areas somewhat as well.
Yeah, that would be only like a couple-hour hike from a parking spot.
Right. So he said he took a paved road, he drove to a spot, and then he hiked from that spot, because he's also said in an interview that the treasure is not on any man-made trail. So wherever he hikes to from the road is either on like a game trail or he just bushwhacked into the woods somewhere. The other aspect of this that can inform your where you want to search is he wrote an autobiography. That supposedly, if you buy this autobiography, it's got a lot of background information on his life, and it could inform your interpretation of some of the clues, right? Well, okay, I bought his autobiography, and I read it a couple times, and he spent a lot of his fondest childhood memories were up in West Yellowstone. So that's an area that there's thousands of people searching for this treasure every summer, right? And it gets more and more every year. A lot of them are up in the West Yellowstone area. They feel like that's got to be it. But then he also mentioned some things about a place in Wyoming. So there's people looking up in Wyoming. There's a lot of people looking in Colorado. And, of course, I'm down here in Taos because there's a lot of people who feel like it's got to be right around Santa Fe. If he was able to hide it in 1 afternoon as an 80-year-old man and he lives in Santa Fe, well, it can't be that far from Santa Fe, right? So that's why I kind of started my search down here. I plan to look a couple places down in this area. Then I'll cruise up to Colorado, check a couple spots up there, and then I'm going to go to West Yellowstone and look up there just for a bit before I head back home. We'll see what happens.
Okay, because that's true. Like, now, he couldn't have gotten on a plane with this treasure chest, right? So where was it? Had to be, yeah.
Well, here's the deal. He was a pilot. He was an Air Force for 20 years, and he had a private pilot's license. But I don't think he had his license when he was 80. So he wouldn't have had access to his own. He couldn't have flown himself. Now, maybe he could have had a friend or somebody do it, but then whoever that person is also knows where this thing is. And he said he's the only person who knows where it is. So, I don't know. To me, that kind of rules out him having a private pilot take him. He certainly wouldn't have flown on a commercial airline. You know, what's he going to do with this $2 million box? You don't want to put that in friggin' security, right? So I feel like it had to have been somewhere that he could have driven. So that's why I started down here. But, you know, the more I think about it, and after having visited with him in person, you know, he did talk about West Yellowstone. So it's like, oh, man, maybe he was trying to steer us up that way? I don't know.
Well, did you tape record your interview with him? Your meeting with him?
Well, I didn't want to take advantage of his kindness. I mean, it was really nice of him to invite us over. I made a video on my YouTube channel about, like, hey, I'm going to look for the Fenn treasure. And that got passed around, and somehow he saw my video, and he really liked my video. So he contacted me and invited me to come over. And he was so kind. I really would have felt crummy, you know, wearing a wire. He doesn't like to be on camera. You know what I mean? So I tried to listen very closely to what he said, and then when we left, we rehashed every little detail. Like, oh, what do you think he meant when he said this? And blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, no, I don't think he gave us any clues or anything. I think he just wanted to meet us, so.
Right.
I don't know. Ed, your guess is as good as mine, Ed. Do you have any idea where this thing might be?
I'm just getting started on this. I'm just starting to work on this, but I think I'm going to beat you to it, okay? Now, when you made your video about this, you were wearing a Girl Scout uniform? Is that what you were wearing?
Well, all right, look, Ed, I have very low videos, low production values. I tried to set the background up to look like I was in a study full of books and maps and jewels, and I tried to find like a safari-type outfit to wear, like Indiana Jones. All I had in my wardrobe was a Boy Scout shirt, so I wore that.
Well, I have to disagree with you because your videos are low budget, but they're very well. A lot of they've come a long way. Let's put it that way. They've come a long way, and they're very addictive. I love when you're kind of ad libbing. You're looking around the corner. Hey, how do I get in this door? Oh, look at this. Oh, and it's still very it's very addictive. You know.
I've got a lot of fan mail from people who, in fact, the best fan mail I got was from a blind guy who said he loves, quote unquote, watching my videos because I narrate really well and I describe what I'm looking at, and so he can watch them as a blind person, which I thought was really cool.
It is really cool, and you're very excited too. You can tell you're genuinely enthusiastic in what you're doing.
Well, cool. Thank you. I'm glad you noticed that because it's true, man. I am enthusiastic.
Yeah, that's true. And you have a great life. You know, people are very jealous of your, envious of your lifestyle, that you're able to do all this traveling and now pretty much making a living, too, off of at least partially. Are you having any trouble with YouTube income?
Well, I don't make a ton of money. I mean, people don't realize with YouTube, I think most big YouTubers, they make some money off of Google AdSense, which is those ads you watch at the beginning of the video.
Right.
So you get some ad revenue, but I feel like that's maybe only 30% of most YouTubers' income. Like, they make more off of affiliate marketing off Amazon, like if you can order things from their Amazon link, and also doing sponsorships, getting sponsored by companies' products, stuff like that. So right now, I don't have anything like that going on. All I'm earning is my ad revenue, which is only like $350 a month. And if I break that down to how many hours I spend editing and shooting, oh man, it's less than minimum wage. But I get some, I get PayPal donations, and I have a Patreon account. People donate to that. So it all works out. It all comes back on me. You know what I mean? I'm doing all right.
Yeah, but you're not having any trouble. Like I just had 60% of my YouTube videos were demonetized by YouTube. You haven't experienced that in the past couple of weeks?
Well, I just try not to violate their terms and conditions.
Yeah.
I don't show any nudity or talk about, I don't know, what was the reason for yours getting demonetized?
A show about a frog walks into a bank, about a joke that I learned a long time ago. The title was A Frog Walks into a Bank, and they demonetized that. They totally, it seems like any YouTube's, any videos.
Don't they have to give you a reason for why they did it?
Nope. They shut down a whole other channel I had one time. I was making $300 a month. They shut down the whole channel. No excuse, no reason, no nothing. YouTube's an uphill game.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, you're at their mercy for sure. And it is BS. Like, if you think about it, I'm busting my hump creating all this content, driving people to their platform, and what? They're throwing me $350 a month. Yeah, you know what I mean? I get it. I'm being taken advantage of a sucker. But for me, the platform is working right now, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I definitely have to recommend her YouTube channel, Wonder Hussy, on YouTube. Incredible stuff. Now, when you went to meet Mr. Fenn, what are some of the stories he told you? Because this is a fascinating guy. Like, there was something about that you were drinking out of the same bottle as Nancy Reagan, something like that.
Well, so he had this art dealer or this art gallery in Santa Fe for years and years. It was a beautiful, huge art gallery that he dealt to the richest of the rich, right? Like Ralph Lauren, all these guys like that, these oil magnates, were buying stuff from him. And he had this beautiful guest house on his gallery grounds that if any, VIP celebrities were coming to town, please stay at my guest house, be my guest, right? But one time he had Jackie Kennedy or Jackie Onassis stay there in like 1984, I think. And she was supposedly a great guest. She left a $50 tip for the housekeeper, a 2-page handwritten thank you note to the housekeeper. She's really a kind woman. Well, she also left behind a little bottle of brandy, Corbel brandy, that she had taken a nip out of before bed, I guess. And he let us have a sip out of it, man. It was far out. I got to drink out of the same bottle of brandy that Jackie Onassis' lips once touched. Wow.
Wait, so you drank from the bottle itself, or did he pour it into a little cup for you?
No, man, he just handed it around hobo style. It was amazing. He gave my sister a little sip and me.
Oh, man, how cool. How much is left in that bottle?
Quite a bit. I mean, I get the feeling he doesn't pass it around too much. So I felt really honored. But what I thought was cool about the whole thing, like, your listeners were like, oh, big deal, what? He gave me some 40-year-old booze? Who cares? Well, what I like about him and his approach to antiquities and art and history is he has like this immediacy with it. Like, he tells a story in his autobiography of he had a Gilbert Stuart painting of George Washington in his gallery. Really valuable, original Revolutionary War era painting. And they were just getting ready to hang it up on the wall, and they happened to have a field trip of students from one of the local elementary schools come through that day. But before he hung up the painting, he let every kid in that class touch the painting, like, made them wash their hands first. And he wanted them to feel a sense of immediacy, like really feel the paint and feel what it was like to be there in front of the father of our country. Like, I just thought that kind of he's really into that immediacy type thing, which with the brandy, when he gave us a sip of the brandy, he didn't just like, here, pass the bottle, take a sip. He goes, now I want you to close your eyes and imagine you're sitting in a room with Jackie Onassis and she hands you this bottle of brandy. It was cool. It was like a whole experience, It wasn't just about drinking booze. It was neat, man. He was a neat guy.
And you didn't think of filming your encounter, saying, hey, Mr. Fenn, can we film this and I'll interview you?
Of course I thought of it, but I went to lunch the day before with another woman who sort of acts like his media liaison or used to act. And she had told me, like, he does not do any TV, he doesn't do any video. So I didn't want to antagonize him and come in and go, well, hey, could I get you on my YouTube channel? I assume he has reasons for not wanting to be on camera anymore, and I understand that. Yeah. He let us take a photo with him. We took a selfie with him, and that was fine.
Now, how do we know this treasure's still there? How do we know someone didn't find it, and he didn't read the book? He doesn't know about the Fenn treasure. He just found a big box of gold, and, he's off, in Tahiti.
Okay. Good question, Ed, and I'm glad you asked.
Okay.
We were just talking about this the other day. He has said numerous times, because about a month ago there was a video came out on YouTube that a guy swore up and down he found the spot in Colorado where the treasure was, but somebody had already dug it up. And if you watch this guy's video, it's very compelling, right? He interprets all the clues. They lead him right to the spot. There's a hole in the ground right there that's about the size of the chest. It looks like somebody dug it up. But Fenn himself came out and said, no, the treasure is still where he hid it. Now, how can you be so sure of that? He's 87 years old now. It's not like he's hiking out to that location once a week to check on it, right?
All right.
So how could he know? How could he know? Well, there's a couple different ways he could know. Maybe there's a game camera on it. There's like GoPro game cameras they set up in the wilderness just to, like, I guess the Forest Service uses them to watch the wildlife or whatever. There could be some type of camera like that set on it, trained on it, so they can watch. There could be a sensor, an electronic sensor in the lid or somewhere around the box. Or there could be, somebody I was talking to theorized that there might be some kind of cash IOU in it, so that if somebody found the box, there's no way they wouldn't cash in the $100,000 IOU or whatever, and then you would know, right?
That's interesting.
So I feel like whatever it is, there's some way that he seems pretty certain that it's still there.
Well, if it was a game camera, don't you have to change the batteries on those things, right?
Well, it could be solar. I'm not sure how that
solar.
works. Yeah.
That's interesting. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the technology with game cameras. It was somebody else told me that theory. So
How much?
I don't know. And then, of course, the alternative is maybe he's just lying through his teeth, and there is no treasure, and there never was, and the treasure is just all about the outdoors. I mean, that could very well be. But like I said earlier, I don't know, man. Talking to him, I got the sense that he's the kind of guy that really would do this, and I think it's out there.
Yeah. Plus, he was so friendly with you and so sincere. You don't think he would? You know what I mean? He wouldn't string you along.
I didn't get the sense that he would.
Yeah, you're a
he
likable
really
person.
Like he wanted to help us. I mean, there was a couple times where he goes, "So, what do you girls want from me?" Like, well, I guess we could have said, "Well, tell us where the treasure is." I don't know. I just felt like that would be unsportsmanlike and gamesmanlike. Like, I'm not going to cheat, right? So we just talked to him. We didn't ask him any direct questions. We didn't drill him.
Yeah.
I mean, we just kind of chit-chatted and tried to, I guess you would call it a charm offensive, right? We just chit-chatted and, made friendly conversation and hoping that we could get some clues from context or, pick up on some little subtle things that way.
Now, does he have, like, any security, any bodyguards? Like, if we were to get back in there, could we kind of convince him?
No. Oh, he's got tight security, man. I was impressed. I mean, he let us come over. It was nuts.
Oh, really?
He's got a very vicious dog, too. That's all I'll say about that.
Okay. Well, we don't want to give up his security procedures there and put him in danger. Now, how much actual hiking have you done looking for this? On foot?
I'll be honest with you, Ed.
Oh.
I came here to Taos, which is where I was going to start the search, but I have a really good friend who lives in Taos, and he's a boozer. So I have been doing nothing for the last 3 days but partying. Thankfully, my friend has to go back to work tonight, so my sister and I are beginning our search in earnest tomorrow morning. We have our first search location picked out, not far from here. We're going to camp out overnight somewhere near the location and then get up in the morning and do some recon. And I will probably spend a couple days down here in this area around Taos. And then we're going to head up through Colorado. Like I said, hit a couple spots up there. Then we'll go to West Yellowstone. Once there, a couple spots. We'll go over to Wyoming, hunt a couple spots. We'll come back down through Colorado, maybe hit one or two more. And then if we haven't found it by then, I have to be home by August 19th anyways. We'll just have to call it a wrap for now. But, I mean, there's people who've been searching for this thing for 7 years. The search season is the summertime, right, because the elevation between 5,000 and 10,000 feet is covered in snow most of the year. So most of the thousands of people who are searching for this thing are mostly searching online, Google Earth, Google satellite images, history, archaeological stuff, maps, and then they go out in the summer once they've narrowed down a few spots, and they look in the summertime. I mean, it's common for people to go year after year. So, you know what, Ed? I might end up coming back next summer and looking again. It's kind of addictive, I feel like I'm addicted now.
Oh, yeah, treasure hunting. It gets in your blood. Did you ever see the movie The Treasure of Sierra Madre with John Huston and Humphrey Bogart?
Oh, my God. That's a classic, Ed.
So you've seen it. Any problems with you and your sister, sleeping at night, one eye open?
Not so far, but it's interesting that you say that because there's a lot of blogs and YouTube channels and stuff devoted to this treasure search, right? So I was watching a YouTube video. There's this one couple that are really into the search, right? They're searching, they're making videos every week. And they did a whole video on the legalities of it and what they would do or what they will do when they find the treasure. It's not like, hey, you find the box and you hold it up, you run home, you call, CNN or the Today Show. No, you got to be careful, right? There's too many dollars. People are going to try to steal it from you. So there's ways, like, these people have this whole encrypted email account set up, and they're going to email the New York Times, but they're never going to reveal who found it, and blah, blah, blah. Then they're going to email Sotheby's auction house anonymously and have them auction everything off for it. It is actually worth thinking about. You do have to have some kind of a plan, right? Because it's, like I said, it's mostly like historic or prehistoric, even bracelets and necklaces and gold nuggets, like placer nuggets, silver coins, like crazy stuff that, what are you going to do? You take it to a pawn shop? Like, I don't know. It's not like easily liquefiable assets. So it definitely does take some planning. You got to figure out what you're going to do if you do find it, okay? Which is a problem I would be very happy to have, by the way.
Hey, I tell you, if anybody deserves to find this thing, it would be you. Plus, you got that adventurous spirit. God bless you. I hope you really get a good shot at this. But you're only going to spend 9 days working on this?
Oh yeah, today's already the 10th. Dang.
Yeah, it's the 10th.
Oh, man. Yeah, I guess for now. I mean, realistically, that's all I have. I have to go to Burning Man, if you know what that is. So I can't really stay any longer than the 19th. Maybe the 20th. I don't know. But realistically, I feel like 9 days is plenty for my first foray. And if that doesn't pan out, then I'll come back. Like I said, I'll come back next spring, or who knows? Maybe I can come back after Burning Man if I really get an idea.
Yeah.
It's flexible, and that's what's nice.
And now, what about like metal detectors? You don't have metal detectors, right?
I don't have one, and he has said, Forrest has said, you don't need a metal detector. You don't need any special tools. So there's people who are just making this very complicated, right? And they're using astrolabes and whatever complicated tools. And, he said you just need to throw your bedroll in the back of your pickup and just go out and look. According to him, you don't need any metal detector special stuff. You just go out and hike and look. So, and two, like I said, he's very adamant about never saying that it's buried. It's just hidden. So one theory that I heard was probably just kind of stuck under some rocks, like a pile of boulders or something.
Yeah.
But it's underground, so you wouldn't need a metal detector.
Yeah. Do you know what it looks like?
Yeah, he's got pictures of it on the cover of his book, and also you can find them online. Anyway, it's a box. I think it's about 10 by 10. The box itself is worth like $40,000. It's a medieval, bejeweled Bible box. I guess some royal families keep their Bible in it in the 1100s or something. So yeah, it's a really cool box in and of itself. And then when you open it up, of course, there's all this other crazy stuff in it. So
yeah, that's the coolest thing, man. I love the whole idea of a treasure hunt. I had on those people from Oak Island. The treasure of Oak Island.
Yeah.
Like just to be a treasure hunter. I've done a lot of stuff. I ran with the Bulls in Spain. I've done some stuff. I would love to add this to my resume. Treasure hunter. So,
I don't know if you've ever heard of Mel Fisher, the guy down in Key West. Is the Mel Fisher Maritime Museum of Treasure Hunting. He was the guy that found the sunken Spanish Armada fleet back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that guy, he searched for that treasure for 20 years every morning, and he had a wife and kids and a family trying to support his family living on this crummy houseboat, and they must have thought he was crazy. Every morning for 20 years he said, today is the day I'm going to find that treasure. He said that every morning for 20 years. Can you imagine? He had unflagging enthusiasm for this thing, and guess what? One morning, today's the day. It was the day. He found it, and his family was rich. So I take that guy as a real inspiration. Mel Fisher, God bless him.
Yeah, is he still alive?
No, he passed away in the 90s, I think. But museum, listen, if you or any of your listeners are ever in Key West, that museum is fascinating. I really recommend it.
Because you've been down there, too. You went to that museum.
Yeah, I went there last February. I went down to do a little camping in Key West. And
did you do a video about that?
No, it was before I started my YouTube channel. I've only been doing my YouTube channel since less than a year. I started right around last October and kind of stumbled into it by chance because I didn't realize people liked watching. I mean, it all started, I did a video of an abandoned town that I happened to be driving through, all these abandoned buildings. I thought it was interesting. I didn't realize that there's this whole group of people, they call it urban exploration, or urbex for short. There's all these urbex fans out there that love watching videos of abandoned places. I mean, they go nuts for this stuff. So that's the bulk of my videos on my channel are me poking around old abandoned places. People like to watch it. Matter of fact, I just shot an amazing video last week that's coming up on my channel soon in this really creepy abandoned hospital up in the mountains in Colorado that I stumbled on. It was so freaky. I don't know what was going on in there, but there was some terrifying rusty old implements in there. So if anybody listening is interested in that kind of thing, stay tuned to my channel. I think I have it scheduled to upload, in the next week or two.
Yeah, there was something just came up on your channel just last night. I got an email about it. You just put up something brand new? I haven't seen it yet.
I try to upload something on every Monday and every Friday. So I think my last upload was there was this old abandoned motel on Route 66 outside Barstow that I kind of went in, and it was very interesting.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, abandoned motel on Route 66, Wonder Hussy on YouTube. Check it out. Now, do you have a lot of problems with trolls on YouTube, on your YouTube channel, or no? Because you got all that good-natured karma stuff, and everybody's nice to you.
Well, I get, I would say, overwhelmingly positive responses, but I got a lot of hate because one of my YouTube fans that I've never met in person gave me basically paid for me to buy a new car, which was super generous. I've never even met this person in person, right? It was just all via email. But now, of course, I got all these hater comments from all these trolls saying, what'd you have to do for that car? I bet you did X, Y, and Z. Like, I guess it's just really hard for people to believe that somebody would do something really generous and nice for somebody in this, which is kind of similar to the whole Forrest Fenn thing. People going, oh, there's no way he really hid that treasure. It's a hoax. It's a scam. People, don't be so skeptical. I think there really are cool people in this world who just want to do nice things for people, right? Yeah, there's a treasure trip. Somebody bought me a car. Stuff happens. If you're a good person like me and you constantly put it out there, it'll come back on you, I feel.
Yeah, it seems to be working.
I do get some trolls, but for the most part, it's been overwhelmingly positive.
And yeah, I saw the video. Someone bought you, it's a Toyota 4Runner. It's a really nice car. A brand new one, 2017. And it's one of my favorite videos, as a matter of fact, because you're going through all the different features of the car and you're displaying in detail about how you wanted certain things and you didn't get certain things. And it's a really cool video. And you would think that Toyota would have chipped in on this, you know?
I'm bad at marketing myself. I should have contacted them.
Yeah.
Before I even bought it, I should have gone to them and gone, hey, look, here's what's going on. I'm going to go buy a 4Runner. Do you guys want to partner up or give me a discount or whatever? First of all, I'm bad at that kind of stuff. And B, I still kind of feel like brands like that might be a little sketched out by me because of all the nude modeling I've done. You know, like corporate brands might be a little bit uncomfortable with that as a buy-in, or they might stain their brand. I'm not sure. Toyota really cares. But that's why I keep my YouTube channel totally safe for work. I don't even curse in it, okay? There's no nudity, nothing. Like, if anybody's wondering, like, my YouTube channel is totally family-friendly. By design, because I had a lot of people email me and complain that I was cussing too much in my videos and their kids were trying to watch them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's all G-rated stuff. So, yeah, I could probably approach some brands now, which I should do. You're right, Ed. You're right. I could have gotten a deal on this Toyota, but hey, as it is, it's a great car, and I love it.
Well, what about the local guy here? I noticed on your Facebook page. By the way, too, Sarah Jane Woodall has one of the most fun Facebook pages that you could be on as well, too. You can check that out. Wonder Hussy on Facebook and Sarah Jane Woodall on Facebook. Always, every post is something fun, and it gets a lot of response, a lot of wacky responses. But now, a local TV personality who sells cars here, named John, came on that thread. Now, did he give you any help to get your car?
Yeah. Well, so I go, hey, I want to go buy this Toyota. Which dealership should I go to? Anybody have any hookups? You know, I just want to know if there's one guy's cooler than the other kind of thing. There's like 3 different Toyota dealerships in Vegas. So, of course, all these people start commenting, well, don't go to this place. They're assholes. Yeah. Well, don't go to this place. Or do go to this place. They're cool, blah, blah, blah. So I had several people go, well, you should go to Findlay Toyota and see John Barr. He'll sell you a car. Everyone's bringing up John Barr. And he's a big, over-the-top personality. Everybody knows him from Vegas commercials. He had these crazy commercials. Well, yeah, he did finally chime in and go, oh, yeah, come see me. I'll take care of you. So really it was all, I have another friend that kind of facilitated the whole deal and helped me out. So it was due to this guy, Eddie, that he took me in. John Barr was there, though, and he, helped me out somewhat. And I got the car, man. Yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah,
but like all this, because you're like a Vegas showgirl. When you drive into Vegas, Sarah Jane Woodall is on a billboard when you drive in. She made $3 on that deal too. I know she did. But you couldn't get anything out of that.
Well, first of all, I don't think the billboard's up anymore. It was for Hainan Airlines, the Chinese airline that started the direct Beijing to Vegas flight, and the billboard went up on the day after the election. And it was up until very recently. In fact, I saw it might actually be up longer than the president himself. But somebody just emailed me and told me that it's not up anymore. So that was my claim to fame, and it's gone.
Oh, but still, you're on postcards. Welcome to Las Vegas. You're all over the place. Everybody can find Sarah Jane Woodall in her. She has a regular showgirl costume, and then you made a 420 showgirl costume as well.
Yeah, I made a Mary Jane, the Green Goddess marijuana showgirl, like the headdress is a big pot leaf. Yeah, and I got quite a bit of work. As a matter of fact, I wasn't in town when the dispensary started to sell legal marijuana on July 1st. If I had been in town, I had some work. Like this woman wanted to have me work at one of the dispensaries, waving, smiling, posters. It would have been amazing. I'm sure it would have been on the national news, right? Because a showgirl, Vegas, marijuana. Missed opportunity, but I was traveling.
Now, because years ago, I know you used to do a lot of busking in the street where you would pose for pictures with people. You dress up in funny costumes and you'd pose for pictures. Are you still doing that?
No, that's something that I do as a fallback because it's very unpleasant work.
Yeah.
Especially, wearing a showgirl costume, a drug-themed showgirl costume like that. You're dealing with drunk people walking down the strip. Yeah, I mean, it was good money, and I'd still do it again if I needed money in a pinch, but I'd rather make it other ways if I can, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, too, they've cracked down on busking so much in Vegas that they've taken all the fun out of it, man.
Yeah, they're taking the fun out. Are you still enjoying Vegas, or are you ready to leave?
No, I enjoy it, and here's why. Because I travel a lot, right? I think it's a great place as a base of operations. Very affordable, favorable tax climate, yada, 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 right? But we're also right in the middle. We're 3 hours from, 5 different national parks. It's a great base. So for me, I'm always traveling. I'm going here, going there. It works for me. And also, with my modeling thing that I was talking about earlier, where I did the desert 8-hour tour, I can't do that anywhere else. Vegas, they all fly into Vegas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, do I want to move? Well, I mean, there's a lot of places I'd like to live. I like Vegas, okay? It's just fine.
Yeah. You had a little trouble down at the Fremont Street. They took your bike?
Yeah, Fremont Street. Here's the thing with Fremont Street. I guess they're trying to clean it up and make it family-friendly, so they cracked down on the buskers. Some developer bought a whole chunk of it, closed down that strip club, Glitter Gold.
Yeah.
Iconic Glitter Gold strip club closed. I can't believe it. And now they got, I don't know if you've been down there lately, but they have these stages with bands playing really cheesy music for the most part. So I went down there recently for a big pub crawl. There's a bunch of us getting together for a Santa Claus pub crawl in July. There's probably 300 people dressed up like Santa Claus. So I rode my bike. I live downtown. I don't want to drink and drive, right? Rode my bicycle. Okay, where can I lock up my bicycle? Well, here's a little fence around one of the stages. There's another bike locked to it. Okay, I'll lock it up here. Then I go back to check on it later in the evening. It's gone. They had cut my lock because I changed it to private property. How was I to know that, I ask you? There was another bike staying there. I'm to find out it was one of the guys in the band. So he, I guess, was allowed to, and I wasn't. But there's no sign posted, right? They gave me the bike back. And all it really cost me was maybe 45 minutes of my time and $10 bike walk. But it's the principle, Ed. It's the principle. They want people to come down there. They don't want you to drink and drive. Come on. Let me change my freaking bike up. Come to find out they have bike racks in the casino parking garages. I didn't know that. So next time I go down there, if I ever go down there again, I'll be sure to chain it up to the appropriate bike rack. Yeah, I'm a little sour about that, man. I didn't like that.
Yeah, you think of all the problems we have in this town, and they want to crack down on buskers, people taking pictures on the strip, and some girl wants to lock up her bike. This is the crime they're working on. The
worst part of it was I had taken some magic mushrooms and just peaking as all this was going down. So I had to waste 45 minutes of the prime part of my mushroom trip sitting in a Fremont Street security office waiting for my bike back. Oh, well.
Now, you're in really good shape, right? Now, because I see on these hikes, I go hiking. I go on a bike ride every morning now. I just moved to a spot where I could ride my bike every morning. And then in the afternoon, I usually take a little hike, but an hour and a half, 2 hours down here in Henderson. But now I was watching doing these videos, and there was one, you were doing a scavenger hunt. And you're not out of breath. You're hiking at a pretty good pace out in that heat, and you're not out of breath. How long hikes do you go on?
Well, I've gotten more into hiking because, like you said, I got wrapped up with the scavenger hunt geocaching company where they'll actually, not company, but group, and they'll pay us cash prices to go to these locations, right? The first one, they had us hike to this Albatross plane crash in Death Valley, this old SA-16 that crashed in 1952 on top of this really remote mountain peak. But we had to hike to this plane crash and get a serial number off of one of the parts, and then we won money. So that was like a 10-hour hike there and back. It was really sketchy, precarious. It was at elevation. I think the trailhead was like 7,000 feet. So that was kind of like the first one we did that broke us in pretty good. We've done some, then we did Panamint City. We hiked up to that. It's a ghost town in Death Valley, but it's a really gnarly hike to get up to it. You got to hike all the way up this canyon. It's exhausting. But I guess with each hike, I get stronger, and You know, here I was 2 weeks ago. I went backpacking for the first time in the Rocky Mountains at like 10,000 feet, carrying a 40-pound pack. Oh, I was definitely winded in that video. I'm going to post that one soon.
No, I think we saw that. Oh, no, that's right. We heard you were just leaving for that hike in the Rocky Mountains. Yeah, and you talked about
I did that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it kicked my butt. I finally found a hike that kicked my butt, and it was the wrong.
Yeah, it's the elevation, right? Because and you still smoke, right?
I don't smoke cigarettes. I never have. I smoke a little bit of marijuana, but I'm not much. I mean, I use it to sleep at night, and I prefer to eat it in a cookie form.
Right.
I'm not a big smoker now. So I'm in good cardiovascular health. I've run a marathon. I work out, blah, blah, I lift weights.
When did you run a marathon?
I ran the Vegas Marathon in 2005, the first year that they had it on the Strip. And I didn't, set any records. I mean, I did. I ran the whole thing. It took me 4 hours and 44 minutes to do it. But, I did it. Hey, and that's a one-time thing, though. I'll never run another marathon because that was really, really hard on my body. And, well, I don't think it's good for you personally.
Nah, my knees, forget it. I can't run like that anymore. Doing the bike stuff. So what adventures do you have planned in the future, Sarah Jane Woodall?
Okay, so after I look for this treasure, if I find the treasure, my adventures will be considerably different. If I don't find the treasure, my plan is I'm going to Burning Man for a couple weeks. I think I'm doing a week-long canoe trip down the Green River in Utah after Burning Man. Oh, then I booked a tour of the Nevada test site on September 26th. So my sister and I are going to go tour the test site. That should be cool. Then I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to work in the medical tent at the Ironman finals in Kona, Hawaii. And after that, I'm going to San Diego for a festival. Then I'm going to Death Valley to some hot springs. Ed, I could go on and on. My schedule is booked solid until Halloween.
How are you qualified to work in a medical tent? I hate to call you on the spot here, Sarah, but how are you qualified?
Well, my really good friend lives in Kona, Hawaii. He's really involved with Ironman. He was the medical director of the race 1 year, blah, blah. So I did it a couple years ago. I just worked as a volunteer, sort of a gopher, right? All you do is, hey, this guy needs some Gatorade, or hey, this guy just pooped himself. Go get some, handy wipes or whatever, stuff like that. Just gopher. It's not like I'm actually doing anything, but it's just a fun way to hang. It's actually a really cool thing to do to hang out at the Ironman finals because you see some crazy stuff there. Those people are nuts.
Yeah, I would love to do that myself. The Silverman Triathlon over here in Vegas was right by my house. It started and ended right there in Green Valley Ranch, where my old house used to be. Yeah, I was training for that for a while, but then when I was running outside, my knees couldn't do it anymore. But I was swimming. I could do the swimming. I could swim for 3 miles. I was ready for that.
Oh, wow, yeah, that's the part I couldn't do.
Oh, you don't...
The bike run maybe, but I'm a terrible swimmer.
Oh, you can't swim, huh?
Well, I can. I'm just not very good at it, Which is another reason why with this treasure hunt that I'm on now, there's been a few people who died looking for this treasure recently, drowning in rivers because they were on cheap rafts. I'm not going anywhere in any river looking for this thing, okay? I'm going to be smart about my search, and I know I'm not a very good swimmer on top of it all. So.
Now, you have an advantage, I would say, because you actually met the guy Fenn, right? Do you think you have an advantage?
Possibly. I mean, like I said, he didn't give us any clues or anything, and I didn't try to sweet talk him out of any. But you never know, man. You never know. Maybe he did. I mean, I'm still mulling over what we said in our conversation, and maybe something will come up like, oh, wait, remember when he said this? That's probably what he meant. Maybe I did get an advantage. I mean, I feel like meeting him in person and getting a sense of who he is kind of an advantage. But up until fairly recently, he was pretty public. He would go out to bookstores and do question and answer sessions and interviews, and he answers a lot of the email that he gets. So he's pretty open with people. I don't know.
Yeah, I could tell he liked you because I mentioned you in my email, to my first email. Now, do you think he steered you away from any wrong ideas that you had about your hunt?
No, because we really didn't spend a lot of time, maybe foolishly, talking about where we're going to look. I mean, I don't even think he asked us, so where are you guys going to go look? We just kind of told him, we're just going to go look, and it was more of a, friendly chit-chatting. We were just sitting there, and he was telling us stories about his days as an art dealer, and he told us some jokes, and he did talk about his days up in West Yellowstone as a kid, so maybe he was trying to, steer us in that direction. I don't know. Maybe he was just talking about it. It's hard to say. So that's why we're going to try to hit like all 3 of the major areas before we have to leave. But yeah, you just reminded me. I only have 9 days. Oh my God, I didn't realize.
And you're wasting an hour with me. You're wasting time right now on the phone. I don't know what to do.
I know. What is this?
Well, some very good planning there, Sarah. Now, Sarah, you've done so much in your life. You were a columnist. You were a nude model, a fetish model. You're a blogger. Now you're a YouTuber. What's in the future? Will there ever be a Mr. Hussey in your future?
Well, Ed, it would take a pretty strong man, but it might actually be more of an insane man to put up with me. So who knows, man? There could be, very well be. I'm not ruling anything out, but I'm so. Oh man, I'd love to just get up and go.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to be tied down to anything right now. I mean, if I can find a guy that's similarly footloose and fancy, pretty great. But if not, hey, I'm cool being single for now. I'm very happy. I have a full social life. No shortage of offers.
And what about kids? You would never be able to raise kids with this kind of lifestyle, or would you like homeschool them?
I don't want to have kids. I mean, I have a younger sister and brother that I'm considerably older than. I'm 12 years older than my brother. I basically raised him. I feel like I already had that experience. I've changed enough diapers, Ed. I don't need to do any more of that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. If you grew up with a child that was 12 years younger, yeah, in your fun years, you would have been doing all that child-raising stuff. Yeah, that's not much fun. But now, you and your sister are very close, right?
Yeah, very close. She does most of my adventures with me. She's camera shy, though. She doesn't like to be on camera, but she'll help me shoot some of the stuff for my videos. And she's usually with me. And, in fact, she kind of has her own little fan base among my fans. They're like, oh, I caught a glimpse of your sister. Wow, your sister's more elusive than a bighorn sheep. Like, she has this whole cadre of people that, like, love catching a little peek of her in the background. So,
yeah,
who knows? Maybe she'll get more comfortable as time goes by and she'll start being in the videos.
Yeah, the mystery of the sister, right? And now, does she live with you, or does she live in Vegas?
No, she lives in L.A., so she's got a great situation over there. So that's also good for me, because anytime I have to go to L.A. for anything, I can stay over there. Matter of fact, I was invited to speak at the Los Angeles Adventurers Club sometime. I would love to do that. I think it's a male-only organization. So for them to invite me, it would be really cool. So maybe next time I'm in LA, I'll do that.
Yeah, one time I was down at Pier 66 in Florida, and staying at the same hotel was the Gay Men Adventurers Club, and it was a wild bunch, to say the least. Okay.
I love it, man. Hey, listen, I'm all for anybody just wanting to get out and explore, because there's so much cool stuff in this world, you know.
Yeah, there really is. I'm very envious of your lifestyle. Oh,
well, I just try to make the most of it. We're all given a short time on this planet. It's up to us what we do with it, right?
I was going to ask you one more question now, and then I'll let you go, because I know you have adventures to go take care of, and hussy things to hussy, and videos to vid.
Got a huss.
Yeah, got a huss. Yeah, right. Hussy's got a huss. Now, up there in Northern California, you found it's called like the Secret Beach or something like that, the Secret Coastline.
Oh yeah, check this out. So there's this area of the Northern California coast called the Lost Coast, and it's called that because if you take Highway 1 north, it veers away from the coast towards 101.
Right.
And then it cuts off this whole chunk of coastline there's no freeway access to. So it's this really rugged, remote, kind of foggy, misty, total Bigfoot, Sasquatch territory type place called the Lost Coast. And there's a wilderness area at the southern end of it called the Spingola Wilderness. And I did a video there a month ago. Beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, check out the video. I mean, it's a beautiful forest right on the beach. You can drive right down onto the beach, which you can't do that anywhere in California. There's these giant 1,000-pound Roosevelt elk just kind of grazing around in a field like 20 feet away from you. It's like the Garden of frickin' Eden out there. So if you guys are ever, anyone listening, if you're ever up in Northern California near Fort Bragg area, check out the Spingola Wilderness. You will love it.
Yeah, it's a really mellow video, too. There's a different vibe to this video. It's really cool. It seems like you're really mellow.
I wasn't sure people would like it because I felt like it was boring. There's no like action in it, but it got a good response.
No, yeah, that's a good video. Now, how did you know about that place, though? How'd you find it?
Well, my dad had told me about it a long time ago. He went camping there once. I guess he told me about it when I was a, teenager, and he was saying, oh, yeah, there's no running water, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, I was like, oh, my God, how could you go camping in a place with no running water, no cell phone signal? Oh, how is this even possible? Well, now, all these years later, I do that stuff all the time, so I thought, let me go check this place out for myself. And, hey, it was great. I've been there twice.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I'm going to look it up. Now, real quick, though, I noticed you posted a picture recently of when you first came to Vegas, you were working for Cashman Photos, taking those pictures of couples in the casinos.
Brother, yeah, I sure did. What an outfit.
Explain to the people what that is, because you kind of embarrass people into buying these pictures. You find a couple on a date, you take their picture, and you charge them like $175 for a package of pictures.
It's a racket, Ed. It's a shameless racket, and I'm embarrassed that I was party to it for so many years. Yeah, so basically I worked in a showroom. Like, you go to the show in Vegas, right? And you're sitting there ready for the show to start. Well, here comes this chick. Hey, get together, smile. I'll take your picture, blah, blah, blah. And, we do it on spec. We don't charge anybody for it. You just buy it if you like it after the show. But you are sort of preying on people in the sense that, they come out of it. Like, I spent a lot of time working at the Celine Dion show at Caesar's Palace, right? So people come out of that show and they're drunk, tipsy, whatever. All these love songs, they're all feeling sentimental. Oh, yeah, sure. How much is it? Oh, $45. Okay, sure. We'll take them all, blah, blah, blah. So it's not like we're twisting their arm. Or I never twisted anyone's arm, but it did feel like kind of weird.
Yeah, because you're on a date, your girlfriend's all dressed up. She wants a nice picture, and then the bill comes and it's like, $40, man.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's crazy.
Because I remember that being like $125 back in New York. A long time ago. Oh. It was $40.
We charged $45 at Celine Dion when I worked there. You got this cheesy kind of like fake vinyl or PVC album. You open it up, and there's a picture of Celine Dion on one side, and then there's your picture on the other side. And it's $45. And you keep them all day long. I couldn't believe it.
And it's called Cashman Photos, and Cashman is like a multi-billionaire. They have a whole... what do you call those things?
No. Just so you know, Ed, just so your listeners know, the Cashman who runs Cashman Photos, that's not his real last name. It was two twin brothers that moved here in the 60s, moved to Vegas in the 60s to start their photo thing. And their last name was Weinblatt, I think.
Oh.
Named it Cashman because of Cashman, Cadillac, Cashman Field. They just wanted to kind of glom onto that name. That's not really their name.
Sarah Jane Woodall, thank you so much. We're out of time. I tell you, I can't tell you how much joy you bring me with all your material that you put on. I really, really enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. Have a great afternoon.
Good night. Find the treasure.
Bye.
Sarah Jane Woodall, Wonder Hussy, okay? And you can find her blog is wonderhussy.com. There's a lot of great pictures on there, too. And I know the first time I had her on, because, back then, 3 years ago, she was focusing on the nude fetish modeling. And a lot of people got a lot of heat, when I tried to promote her Facebook page and her blog, people saying, oh, it's pornography, it's prostitution, and all this stuff, really insulting comments. But she's kind of evolved from that, and now she's doing these adventure tours, type eco tours out there in the desert and stuff like that, these abandoned buildings and stuff, and abandoned motels. Like I said, the Barker Ranch up there with the Manson family. Really, really, really good stuff. And it's the kind of thing that where you go and you watch one video, and then the next one comes up, because YouTube suggests the next one. You'll be there for a couple hours, and each video is like 20 minutes, somewhere like 30 minutes, but you'll be there for a couple hours easily binge watching these YouTubes, and you live vicariously through these adventures that she takes. And such a likable person too. So Sarah Jane Woodall, wonderhussy.com is the blog where she writes too. She writes. She's a very talented woman. She kind of plays this goofy character, but really she's just a brilliant artist. And also too, if you check out the photography, she designs these costumes and these outfits with these themes. It's just incredibly unbelievable stuff. Great work. And also too, because you meet a lot of models here working in Vegas, and I always tell them, I says, you go, you want to make money, you go friend Sarah Jane Woodall on Facebook, because she'll share jobs. She shares gigs. Hey, I can't make this gig. You want to do this gig? Guy's going to pay a couple $100. Check it out. And she'll do that for you. You can get work from being on her site. And I tell these young girls, I says, watch what she does. That's what you should be striving for, to be doing in modeling, real creative work. Sarah graduated art school, in California, so she's a real artist, And when she does, I know she plays this goofy character, but not to dismiss that, because I think that's a lot of fun too. Anyway, enough of my big internet, Facebook and internet radio crush on Sarah Jane Woodall. Back to the member section. That's what we're here to talk about. All right. We're here to talk about the Opperman Report member section. Let's see what's coming up. I got some. No, you'll hear the show last night. It's the only problem because we moved the recording time of this show, so it's all messed up. I taped a show with Carl Dahmer, who was shot by Son of Sam, cult. Fascinating show. I really enjoyed it, and talking to him behind the scenes and stuff like that. We're scheduling a whole bunch of shows about Son of Sam and Berkowitz and Process Church. We're going to be doing a whole new revisit to all that. I have a show coming up. I'm going to be a guest. I believe it's Tuesday on Lift the Veil, I think it's called. It's a YouTube show, and I think it's live on Tuesday, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Pacific time. There will be no way for me to tell you about this. I'll have to tell you last night on my live segment. This is so backwards. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. But we're going to be talking about the McMartin preschool case. And, of course, new developments I came up with that I just found out with David Berkowitz. Like one thing that came out that's huge that I just found out is that Berkowitz had in his address book the phone number for Roy Cohen and the phone number for Roy Radin. So a lot of new material came out in that interview. I really enjoyed it very much with Carl Dahmer. And the member section, you could join. That's what supports all this. That's what funds all this. There's a lot of great new content in there. I'm taping a show with a young woman here, Annika Mack. It's this young woman here in Vegas who was a victim of human trafficking herself and basically kidnapped and forced into prostitution. Very young woman. She's only 20 years old now. And she does public speaking gigs and stuff like that. So I'm going to be interviewing her coming up. A whole bunch of stuff coming up. I can't even think of it all right now off the top of my head because I'm not quite used to doing this 10 a.m. stuff. And I got a long day ahead of me, a lot of work. So thank you so much. Remember, if you want to advertise on the show, we're just about to hit 3 million plays on Spreaker and YouTube combined on the present YouTube channel and the present Spreaker channel. 3 million. If you would include the old YouTube channel, it would be 3,300,000. But just so you know that most people listen on iHeart and iTunes. So when you see 3 million or 2 million on Spreaker, it's 10 times that on iTunes and iHearts. So we're talking about 20 million views. But there's no counter on those things you can't see. So just give you an idea of the kind of reach we have. And that's not including any of the stations that play us live, or Stitcher, or Podbeam, or all that kind of stuff, too, that plays us in Brain TV and all that stuff. So, thank you for the show. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.